Hi, I'm Lou Rosalia, and this is Crew Call. Is typing in all caps really yelling at somebody? That's what we're going to talk about today on Crew Call. And with me, we have our wonderful guests, perfectly digitally behaved, especially for this environment, Mr. Joe Scacciaferro, Mr. Frank Scacciaferro, Mr. Scott Glozzi. Welcome, guys. Everybody good?
Yeah.
Great.
Great, Lou.
Good. This is our post-holiday show.
So
Happy to see
excited.
everybody. Good. So here's this topic. And it came up because we were sitting around the table for Christmas, and the younger generation was on their little phones and whatever stuff they had, and they were playing games and all this and that. So I thought about there's become a acceptable digital behavior that a lot of people know and a lot of people don't know. The younger generation knows it well because they grew up in it. The older generation has no clue, and they think a lot of it's rude. So with that, I wanted to go around and see what was the transition in the moments of awareness for us when we came into understanding that there are rules around this thing. So I'm going to go first, and I'm going to go to Joe because Joe's the one who first yelled at me for this. And I was typing actually Frank and the crew on the other side of the business, the Ferro production side, and I typed in all caps. And Joe wrote back. Actually, I think you called me. He said, "You really can't do that anymore." I said, "Do what?" He said, "You can't type in caps anymore." I'm like, "Okay, I was just emphasizing a word. I mean, it was important." He said, "Yeah, but that's yelling at them." I'm like, "Yelling at them? I don't even understand what you're talking about, yelling at them." So that was like a whole bit of crazy and mind altering things for me that okay, something's happening. We're starting a different world. Joe, what was your first kind of awareness of something shifting?
Because of the industry we're in, phone texting was, really, I grew up with it, but let's put it that way. Because when phones were able to send text, that immediately allowed us to be in our environments that you can't talk, you can't get on a phone. So texting just became a thing. And I don't think it's rules, it's more of a practice. It's something that it becomes a socially understood or a socially utilized form. And
Yeah.
caps is one of those things.
So it's kind of like more of the norms than actual written rules that happen. Frank, do you remember when writing in caps wasn't a thing?
Like like writing a paper and it was in caps?
Yeah, like it didn't have that meaning. Like, oh my God, I just wrote. Like now, I write something in caps. I'm like, oh God, did I just?
I don't know. I never really used it. Honestly, the first time I really noticed like somebody using it was when you would message us. Because you used a lot of things, or even in emails or text or anything like that, you would always use at some point somewhere in the message it would be in all caps. And like I understand, how to like not take it as you yelling at us, and like have it be a point of emphasis. But yeah, I guess to everybody, mostly they would take it that you're like you're amped up and like moving towards them as if you were speaking in front of them, that you're more yelling.
That's just that to me. That's incredible that you even say that. Like I understand that you're not yelling. Gloss, does anybody really give a crap about it? I mean, is it real?
It's real. I mean, I see it every day. But I think texting has become, like I started with AOL when I was a kid. And then I moved up and eventually texting became a thing. And you get all these like, over the years, I guess society and as a whole has just identified hidden meanings behind things like caps, and I'm so guilty of it. And Frank knows because, we text all the time, obviously. And if someone says something really funny in like a group chat, I'll do all caps, ha 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 ha. Instead of like writing LOL or stamping something as a ha ha, I express myself by sending all caps, and I get yelled at it like all the time. Like, dude, why do you always do this? Just say haha, put a little LOL on it, or like stamp in the text, which is ridiculous. All these things I'm saying, that there's this many forms of communication,
That's crazy.
but yeah, I feel like it just has that hidden meaning. It's like you're expressing yourself. Maybe you're getting a little loud, you're getting emotional over what's going on.
It's crazy.
Send it in all caps. Yeah.
There's actually a secret
It's a
police
thing.
force correcting us.
Oh yeah, it's a thing.
Joe, let's move from text to emojis. First of all, the name emoji, I was just hysterical. But second of all, when did you even become aware that those were something to use? Was that the same thing in terms of the production and being able to, use stuff and not have?
I mean, these things. There wasn't like there wasn't a mic drop. All of a sudden, it's emojis. It's the companies, the phone companies, the devices. That became a thing. Originally, you actually had to buy emojis. And then that had to go back on, and it's as Gloss said, it's an evolution. It's a social evolution, and they just become easier. And people get lazier rather than say something, and because texting replaced a voice call because it's just easier. You don't have to engage in a conversation, and emojis replacing a text because you don't even have to write words.
Yeah,
you can just shoot an emoji back, and you can just shoot a punctuation back, and it's supposed to say something. And then there's racial versions of the same emojis, which just blows my mind. But I get it. I have adapted to it, and I've become accustomed to it. But I remember when I first started using text, and I'm going back to early flips. You were doing. You only had 100. I don't even remember what the number was, but you could only put 100 characters in. So that's when you would use the U and the R and the it was completely cryptic.
Yeah. And that's why Twitter is what it is. That's why it has that limit of characters, because that's when originally you couldn't send anything over that amount of characters, and it came from what an SMS text would be able to send.
Exactly. Thank you, Frank.
Yeah. Lou, I have a few things on this topic. Number one, Joe is a huge sticker guy of his own emoji, his own face.
Okay.
Not like a selfie of him, but like the sticker cartoon kind of looking thing.
Like a Bitmoji.
He's big into that. I think the evolution of more people using it is the fact that now I'm assuming maybe Androids do this. I have an iPhone, but if you say haha, it'll give you the option of just replacing that haha with a laughing face emoji, or other words that say that if you write the word trophy, it'll just replace it. So you could almost write an entire sentence and it'll just keep replacing the actual words with an emoji. So it's more like if people didn't know that emojis existed, they would be writing a word like Val, my sister, writes stuff all the time, and there's emojis all over the thing. And I'm like, I know she's not going in and cognizantly going in and putting these in there. It's just because they're suggested and they get basically automatically put in there.
Yeah,
that's crazy. So this was my part two to the question. You answered part one of it was emojis have different meanings. Joe said that people get lazy and they just start, throwing them in there. And then you said technology actually gives you alternative ways of saying things by showing you the picture of trophy or writing the word. Frank, what about these alternate meanings of emojis? Like Joe said, some of them are racially, some of them are sexually inappropriate. Like certain fruits mean other things, certain faces mean other crazy things. Of course, you got that little turd guy, the little. That was like, I thought that was pretty raucous. But then when I saw them like, oh, you can't put up I don't even remember what fruit I put up there, a vegetable. But I was like, oh, that's so inappropriate. I said, what? I'm making eggplant for dinner. I don't understand.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Is that just how does the word, more than that, is how does that word get around? Like, hey, this means that.
I mean, it's just like any other like pop culture, something that catches on. I don't know where these things originate. I don't know where anything that's like trending originates, but it just becomes popular with, by if you're looking on Instagram or any type of other social media, you keep seeing the same meaning of something, and then you start using it, and then it's just. I mean, that's just how things trend now. But yeah, there's plenty of emojis that have a double meaning, probably more of the slang meaning than the actual, like nobody uses the eggplant emoji. Be like, I'm making eggplant tonight.
Except Blue.
Or like or you post a picture on Instagram of like a nice, peach cobbler that you made and have like the peach emoji.
And that's something else. We're not even going to go into it. I don't want to know.
Yeah.
But yes, I get it.
Yeah, it's like social media makes a post viral. Someone sees a second meaning of an emoji on social media in a viral post, And they're like, oh, that's what that means. All right, this is how I'm going to use it from now on. And then it's like Joe said, it's just an evolution. Then that's what it means.
Let's stay with you, Gloss. Urban Visuals has their policies and procedures manual. I read it. It's very in depth.
Good. I'm glad you're up to date.
And my question to you is there a place in business for emojis? Does it help, hurt? Do you think it should be there?
Yeah. So I'm going to answer this question in two parts, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And I know when I do this, you guys get so excited. Facebook. I'll start with. Have you guys ever heard of Morning Brew? Morning Brew is basically, it's a company, and they it's like a news. I read their newsletter every day. Every single morning they send a newsletter at 6 a.m. on the dot, and it's just about like trending things with stock market, with business, with just a bunch of bull crap. It's nice to read in the morning. But on their subject line, every morning is a emoji of a cup of coffee. They're called Morning Brew Cup of Coffee, and I started realizing that I would open their newsletter every morning. And I usually don't do that. Like, I'll sit down and read my emails in the morning with my cup of coffee, and I open it up. And I'm like, why am I attracted to this email when I have 20, 30, 40 emails in my inbox? And I realized it's because of the emoji in their subject line. It catches my eye, and I look at it. I see it's Morning Brew. I open it. And I don't know if it's become that because I'm used to it now, or if it's because the actual emoji attracts me to it. You know, it's like, I guess it's like as a kid when you're choosing what to read, and you see a book with all pictures and a book with all words, and you're like, I'm going to read the picture book because it's easy to get through, and you know, it's attractive. Number two, talking about emojis, think about the emoji and how it's progressed. Like Facebook, they just launched Metaverse. You started with emojis, it became Bitmojis, like how Joe likes to share, what Frank said. And now it's become a living, working version of yourself within a world that doesn't really exist. So emojis have kind of, in a sense, become real things in the form of avatars now. And that's a perfect example of how businesses use it. Facebook has a whole world that is emojis basically.
Emoji-based things.
So it's become a real thing, and it's a part of every day, whether you realize it or not. You know.
Gloss, those subject line emojis, what is it? Is it the same emoji every time, or is it based off of what they're talking about? Like, is it their signature emoji?
Theirs is a cup of coffee.
Not an eggplant.
I do read a couple other ones. I don't read them every day like I do this one, but I do have certain emails that come in, and they use a different one depending on the subject line. And I always thought that was interesting. And my eyes are always attracted to that first in my email, always, every single morning.
Yeah, they've anchored you to it. That's interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Joe, Gloss says he reads that at the table when he's having his breakfast and his coffee. Are you old school enough to think, like I do, that there's an inappropriate use of digital technology at times?
No,
You just
no, because I think I was inappropriate when I was young compared to the generation before me. So I don't. Everything's generational.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if there's. But I want to go back to one thing you were talking about.
Yeah.
What I did notice professionally, because I deal with a lot of every level of professional, from accountants, lawyers, to crew people, to newbies coming out of school. So I see a lot of different versions of that. The signature on an email and the greeting of how you do it. Some professionals still use "Dear Mr. Scotcha Ferro."
Yeah.
Where everybody else is, "Hey, what's up? Hey, whatever, boo." It's so you get those versions of it. And in the
How do you spell that? Hey, wubba boo.
That's Joe's Italian family dinners who's saying that. Oh, bubba boo.
Hey, wubba boo.
All right.
Oh,
Okay.
Sorry, continue.
Frank, I almost did it.
I know. I heard it coming out.
Said it. So anyway, that amazes me, and I don't know how to appropriately respond, because if they know me, they know I'm not a dear so-and-so person.
Right.
And I'm not a sincerely, truly, thank you, beloved Joe Scotchaferro. I don't write that way. I don't speak that way. But I feel out of respect, I'm supposed to acknowledge what they're saying. So, and the same would go for kids sitting at a table. If I'm sitting there and it's just me and my nephews or my nieces and they're doing something, I don't care. But if there's a senior member of our family there and they're trying to engage in a conversation with them, then they get the slap in the back of the head. Hey, your grandmother's talking to you. Stop it.
Yeah.
Put the thing down, put it away, go over there. But that's, you know.
Yeah, it's circumstantial. I was going to ask Frank, does he think, Frank, I'm talking to you like Frank's not here. Frank, do you think it's a generational thing? Straight down the line?
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think it's a bad thing for the new generation. And I don't think it's just a different time period of life and like what's normal to that generation. So it's not like, yes, there is, and what Joe's alluding to is just having respect for the other generation.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, you need to have that, and you need to get slapped in the head a couple, sometimes just to remember that you need to show that respect. But I don't think it's, and they might not be looking at their phone or doing something or watching a video or something else just deliberately to be disrespectful. It's just like that's normal for them, like just like they're in school, and I'm sure every school has computers and they have iPads in front of them, like for work purposes or whatever. But like that's just normal in their world. It's not for another generation. And real quick, speaking of different generations, this has to do with everything, but not directly what we were talking about. Does anybody in here read the newspaper?
Never have, ever.
Neither have I. My question is, because I don't read them, I don't ever look at them, have they ever adapted some form of using emojis in their text?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
No.
Still, I wouldn't know.
But you know what, Lou? Frank just said something really spot on. If you go back to like my dad's generation, the paper was open. He would sit and have breakfast with the paper open.
Yeah.
What's different of having my phone open?
Yeah.
That's a really good point. So were our parents just as rude as us?
Yeah.
That's the point. People are just rude, bottom line.
But to that point, though,
we can put that in the lower third in all caps. People are rude.
But to that point, we're talking about like things being normal now. Mm-hmm. It's not. Is that really normal though? Like, because when you're buried in your phone, and I think of it as just like a respect thing. Like if I'm talking to you, or if we're like chatting, and you're looking like this, yeah, I'm never talking to you again. Like that's so disrespectful, and like, I don't know. It's something about that just pisses me. I can't stand that.
I usually stop talking. Like if I'm telling a story or just talking to somebody and I see them look down at their phone, and then I see them like reading, and then I'll either just start talking about something else that has nothing to do with what I'm actually seeing to see when they regain their attention, or I'll just stop talking and just stare at them and wait for them to look up and be like, "Oh, I'm listening." I'm like, "No, you're not. You're not listening."
Tell me the last 10 things I said.
I don't even care at that point. I'll just stop, and I was just like, all right, if you don't care enough to pay attention for 2 minutes, that's something I have to say, then I don't really care about telling you anymore.
And what's the follow-up line that everybody says? I'm listening.
Yeah.
I'm listening. Go ahead, keep going. I'm listening. Hold on 1 second. I just want to do this.
Yeah.
Scott, I'm listening. You just told me Star Wars was the best movie ever.
Yeah, that's so true. Glaz, I want to go to you. What you talked about normalizing, and what would you do today that you would have felt uncomfortable about doing a couple of years ago? Like answering a call in front of a crowd, or telling your mom or dad, hang on, or...
Yeah. No, never tell them that. Then I got to do chores. I think texting my clients, I guess, is a good example. Because I would never, I never even thought about doing that, because I always, like exactly what we're talking about, right on topic. I always thought it was so unprofessional. But now I ask my clients, I'm like, hey, like moving forward, since now we're working together, what's the best way I should communicate with you? Via email, I can call you. And a lot of them, like more than I thought, tell me to text them. It's harder to keep track because things kind of get lost rather than having like a nice email thread that's open and you can just refer back and search. But it's become so normal now. 2 years ago, I would have never thought I was texting, my main client like daily, like, hey, when do you want to meet tomorrow? Like, yeah, and then they're sending me emojis, and it's so casual. I think like the overall, especially with small businesses, it's become so much more casual. So texting is just like a normal thing. Most people want to just text, which is crazy. I prefer email. It's just easier to keep track of stuff. Sorry.
Joe, put on your professional hat and then take it off and answer the question 2 ways.
Oh, leave it like that.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. Is there a professional video etiquette, like how to behave on camera versus how to behave like on Zoom?
Again, it's all about who you're talking to and what the relationships are. But Zoom makes me crazy. I mean, and I'm not saying Zoom. I'm just saying any virtual meeting environment, because other than I can't even say that. I was going to say other than production people. There's a lot of production people who have no idea how to use the gear appropriately, and it's impossible because it's so distracting to me. That it's hard for me to follow the conversation without telling them to move your camera away from that big white window behind you because I can't see your face. There's those things. So, yeah, I guess. But it's more use of the technology than protocol of the technology.
Than protocol.
Joe, how much does this piss you off when you're on a Zoom call and it's like this?
Well, like
This is most people, right?
trying to put those on television, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly.
Horrible. Figure
Thanks
it out, guys.
Thanks for the live example. That was awesome.
Yeah, no problem.
I think
Awesome.
there's something called flash studios, which is if you watch news, the ones that look great and are well lit and are perfect and they have a really nice background, those are actually studios. They're little rooms. They're like what used to be an audio booth, and they're in there and they're lit and they're blah, blah, blah. But right next to them is a guy who's dialing in on his Wi-Fi in his kitchen and has his laptop, as Glad just demonstrated, which amplifies the distance between the two.
Yeah.
It makes him look even worse.
Yeah.
Because you've got studio, knucklehead, studio.
That's a good point, Joe.
Right.
That's a
But
really
the
good
involvement of that being so regular and normal now, like to answer your question of what you asked Gloz, it's really like it can't not. I don't want to use the same because it's not the same meaning, but you'll know what I mean. Is like breaking the fourth wall. Like now, everybody doing stuff like newscasters and people on like Good Morning Football, like shows like that, Good Morning Football, when they're not in the studio. Number one, it's a different feel of the show because when they're not in studio together, it just feels completely different. And you can tell that by just being a viewer. But it also like it broke that. I'm going to say it again, that fourth wall of now you see that person's house or their, some part of their living room or in their bedroom. I mean, it really like forced everybody, whether you're on camera in a professional environment or not, or if you're just, on a Zoom call or whatever with your friends, family, and anything like that, it really, forced you to let people into your personal space.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
But it didn't have to. And that's, as a producer, when I'm producing remotes and we're pulling remotes in, we're obviously on. We see them, we're talking to them before we take to air. And I've been in production environments, in the control room, where nobody's saying anything. And these guys look like what Gloz just had. And to me, it's disrespecting them. So I'll jump on and say, hey, listen, do me a favor. I want to make sure you look and sound 100%. Move your iPad, put it under a book underneath there. Move this, move that, do this. And 99% of the time, when we go off air, I'll get a phone call from them saying, dude, thanks a lot. I really appreciate that. I didn't even know how to correct it. And everybody else is afraid to talk to them. Mm-hmm. You're pulling in usually, high-end talent, or you're pulling in a celebrity, or you're pulling in something. But it's my responsibility to make sure we don't take them to air looking like a knucklehead.
Yeah. And I saw I just saw the new, I will be remiss if I did not throw this in. I just saw the new Spider-Man last night, and they took a very subtle but huge shot but it was a funny thing. And if you paid attention and saw it it was a very quick thing. The, what's his name? The news guy, Jameson, I forget it, Jonah Jameson, the guy that runs the Daily Bugle in Spider-Man. Anyway, so he's doing a newscast in the beginning of the movie, and it's just it's just like a regular shot as if you're like watching TV, and it has like his whole news thing behind him, blah blah blah, and he's talking about Spider-Man and kind of setting the whole story up, and then they cut from a behind the scenes, and he's in his basement with a camera and 2 lights and a green screen behind him, and he's sitting in his boxers, and I was like, and it cut away like that, and I was cracking up. Nobody else really was. I mean, the 3 other production guys I was with didn't even notice it until I brought it up after it, and I was like, that's so like 10 years from now, if you watch that movie and you didn't really live through COVID like the way that we did,
Right.
and this, you won't even understand why that's hilarious. It's such a clever thing that they threw in there that I which is funny that that's the coolest thing that I'm telling you about that happened to Spider-Man. So.
Okay, and before, Lou, I know you have to move on, and I'm sorry to grab some time, but I have to at least qualify. Frank is to Spider-Man as Glaz is to Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even though this is a Ninja Turtle here, that's the other one. I have plenty of Spider-Man stuff. Maybe I'll start swapping them out.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Or I'll wear my mask one day and Glaz can wear his helmet.
I'm gonna sneak some Star Wars guys on there too.
I mean, Joe's smart. He buys T-shirts, so they're easy to wear. I have a Spider-Man mask. It'd be pretty weird if I wore that.
That's
Go ahead, Lou.
Okay, so now I want to talk about something that I'm really fascinated by. I remember watching TV when they had those desks, news desks built, and you'd see the glass on the top, and then you'd know that there was a big old TV monitor, buried in that desk. When did it become normal for on-air talent to really just have their phones out, and there's a wide shot, you see somebody sitting there like this, or somebody grabs it and does a statistic? They're actually using their digital technology like on air, like it's nothing. It's not even a secret anymore. How'd that happen?
Because it's if you think about what was acceptable to you is the same thing now. Because anchors in those days would go, hold on, I'm getting somebody blah, 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 blah. That's wacky that you're telling people you have an IFB and somebody's telling you how to do stuff. But it was completely acceptable and complete protocol. And the other thing was they'd pick up papers and they'd be shuffling through papers, reading stuff. So it was a prop. You'd lay out papers so it looked like they had a lot of stuff going on, especially election night. Papers all over the place and things. Sports people do it. So now it's just neat and convenient. So again, I don't see anything. It doesn't even offend me because it's neater than having all that white crap all over the desk, which kills us in a studio.
Yeah. That's got to be some. Whose job? What's that job title? You're in charge of fake paper props.
Well, it would be a PA, but then speaking to that exact what Joe's saying is like I work on a lot of all different types of sports desk, studio, post game show type of situations. And it's funny because they still do have a PA that at the end of the game or at halftime will be running down from like the 3rd floor or wherever the floor is that they print out the stat sheets for that game, which are their live stat sheets. But like they're printing that out from something that they're getting off of like NBA.com or wherever they get those stats from.
Right.
So this kid's running down with like papers and like, can I go out there like during commercial and like we'll hand out papers. Meanwhile, the hosts already know that stuff because they're on their phone during the commercial or they're looking at it and they're reading Twitter and they're reading live stuff to use in the show as it is. I mean, like you said, how many times do you now see people look and be like, oh, this person just tweeted blah, blah, blah. Yeah. The way I found out about the NBA shutting down for COVID was because I was doing a post-game show for the Knicks and they canceled the game. But I found that out from the anchor was on Twitter and he goes, yeah, it looks like or he was talking to somebody on the inside before it was like public. He was like, oh yeah, the NBA. He's like, looks like they're canceling games left and right, blah, blah, blah. They had just canceled the college game across the street at halftime. And he basically like not on air wasn't doing that, but to all of us in there. And we're like, what is going on? So, I mean, it's like Joe said with the IFB thing, it's a different way of just breaking news.
Breaking news.
Yeah.
The risk reward.
For any information, really.
Glaz, have you had any stories or experiences of things going terribly wrong when people had phones on set?
I mean, aside from like the occasional drop or bang noise it would make, professional anchors usually pretty good about putting their phones on vibrate, or silent. I did something stupid though. If you want to hear about my stupidity, so I was in the studio operating the old Steadicam as I do, and I had my phone. It was in between segments, and the commercial break was about 4.5 minutes. So it's a long break. So here I am. I'm texting with an ex-girlfriend. She was really pissing me off too, and the director's like, all right, 10 seconds, I'm coming back. So I go to put my phone in to my pocket. It's zipped up. Didn't realize it was zipped. I'm fiddling with it. Now it's 5 seconds. I go to slide it in 4. I finally think I got it in 3. I drop it 2. It makes a huge bang. Everybody hears it. Director goes, what the hell was that? 1, go 4. And that's my Steadicam move. So I missed my pocket. My phone dropped on the floor. Literally 1 second later, I got to do a whole long move. The anchor got distracted. I got distracted. The whole crew heard it. The director heard me what that was. Asked me what that was. Asked everybody what that was over PL. Everyone knows it was me too. So that was my. I think Joe said it a few episodes back. When you get a little too comfortable, that's when things start to go wrong.
Yeah.
I think I was a little too comfortable, and I made a big bang in the studio right before we came back, and that's something you never do.
So another thing that's like super normal now with phones, but can be very distracting. But is talent either doing some type of like 30 seconds before they're going on the air, they're doing this, and they're like, oh, we're about to go live and blah blah blah, because they're promoting the show. They're doing their own promotional stuff on their own social media. Everybody does it, so from a producer's standpoint, Joe can answer that. But from in the studio, usually they're either doing that or they'll be like, hey, they'll be looking around the studio for a stage manager, a camera op, somebody that can, hey, can you take a picture of us on set real quick? And I'm like, I'm not going to say no. So I'm going up there and like going to take a picture. And meanwhile, like, I'm the first camera, like Gloss just said, that's doing the first move of the opening show. And I'm out there with a phone taking a picture of these people. And then they take it and they look at it. And they're like, 15 seconds from going on air. But it's become such a normal thing.
Yeah. That's crazy.
It's still I don't know. In some way, yeah, it's still very unprofessional, but it's so normal that it doesn't even really matter.
But they're shooting their own little shows for social media inside the bigger show. That's very interesting.
Yeah, but it's not cool.
No, it's not.
It's not their show. It's my show.
Yeah.
It's my show. I'm responsible. I have sponsors. I have networks.
My show.
My show.
It distracts.
And I'll be in their ear. No, don't pull my camera guys off. No, stage manager doesn't have to do that. Because as Frank said, it's 90% of the time I'm counting in. Mm-hmm. And they're like, no. And I'll give you the last one with cameras and inappropriate, but I've had to learn to yield to it, is camera ops, A2s, studio guys, stage managers, on their phone during the show, in the studio. Yeah, you can be on your phone if there's certain shots that aren't critical, like Frank would have a hard time. But if he moves in and his show's hanging, then he's got his phone over here, or a ped or a Steadicam who drops it on the ground. It's used to be I would do that in a pre-production meeting. No phones, turn them off. Put them in your pocket. There's nothing that's happening. You can go on break and look, but there's nothing that's happening during a segment that you need to be on your phone.
Yeah.
Now I just is like, whatever, I don't care. Because everybody in the control room, the director, everybody's on their phones.
Yeah.
I have a director who has his laptop open, and he's actually doing another virtual show.
No.
And
that's great.
Right, Frank?
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely.
That's great.
We're running a different business. That's all.
Right.
That's great. So this is the last question. Thank you for the lead-in. We're going to go right down the line.
Funny.
So as the digital world interacts with the analog world, do you think navigating the life and production and getting things done and on the air and out has become easier or harder? Joe?
For me, harder.
Harder for you from your
harder only because I got more things to manage without insulting people because they don't quite understand the ramifications of that domino theory of what they're doing, and there's a lot to it. So I'd rather I always do. My gig is to anticipate problems and get it out of the way before they happen. So that
Yeah. So from that perspective, it's definitely harder. Gloss, what do you think? Easier, harder?
From my point of view,
Yeah. No, from
Well,
Frank's.
not from somebody else's point of view.
well,
We're gonna drop you on somebody else's head.
all right, Dan. I'll say harder.
Harder?
Yeah.
Okay. Frank, from Gloss's point of view?
I think it makes commercial breaks go by quicker.
Yeah.
There you
When you
go.
can look at your phone.
So what would you have done prior to the phone during commercial breaks?
Probably turn Gloss's zoom speed down.
Oh, Frank got me.
I got him. We had talked about it on this show a
Yes.
few episodes ago, and he filled in one of our studio shows, and he was looking the other way on his phone, and I went over and turned it all the way down to slow.
As soon as I started zooming, I looked at. I was like, "You dick!"
I couldn't stop laughing. It took every ounce of my body to when he turned to me before he went to the controls to just stare right at him and not start laughing.
Frank,
and as soon as I saw him go to do it, I couldn't even operate my own camera.
Frank,
You know what the worst part is? Literally,
You said it.
right before that. I go to Frank. I'm like, "Yo, I just turned your zoom speed all the way down."
I was like, oh, that's why, yeah, because I was like, oh, yeah,
Actually, I can't wait until you do your big push into.
good luck.
Yeah. Well, Frank, that was really an eggplant move on your part.
Yeah, you're such a peach.
All right, guys. Thank you. What a wonderful half hour. And Joe, last word.
what?
There you go.
Bubba.
Last word. That is the last word. I'll see you guys.
See you later.
Hey.